We now continue with Smurf.
I am gonna cut the crap and proceed right into what happened to me because I think what I experienced stands well enough on its own. Take it or leave it, essentially. I am North Korean. I have lived in South Korea for some 30 odd years now, and I guess I finally just feel like I am in a good, safe headspace to share this. I was in the North Korean army for as long as I was able to be. I didn't really have all that much way of education about the world, and it just seemed like the easiest choice. Even if I didn't really see much, I would at least see something. More than my family would ever get to see. Both my parents died when I was young, and I did not have much in the way of family, so I was basically raised in a home. I wouldn't say raised so much as owned. I was basically groomed to be in the army. Usually, kids are recruited in the spring, and you have these large send-off ceremonies where parents say goodbye. Military service is mandatory for at least 10 years for me, and I think 7 years for women, but that obviously was not necessary for me. Because I was an orphan at this point, it was basically drilled into me that this was the only way for me to survive, to be able to feed myself, to be able to gain status instead of staying poor and barely scraping by for the rest of my life. I completed basic training within a month, and it was one of the worst experiences of my life. Basic training and just the army in general is rampant with abuse, which I'm sure I don't even need to describe for you to guess at. Daily beatings. I saw one kid tied up in handcuffs in the showers with boiling hot water sprayed at him until I saw bits of his flesh starting to flake off, and he cried and begged for mercy. It wasn't even the worst thing that I saw while I was there, but I don't think it's necessary for you to hear the rest. I think I got my point across. After basic was over, I was assigned to my branch, which was ground forces. Ground forces is the largest and has over 1 million soldiers. It's basically what you get shoved in if you were deemed to be too much of a bonehead to do anything more complicated than stand and salute and wipe your ass and say please and thank you. After that, I was assigned to my first post. The less desirable spots, the things that are in the middle of nowhere, things that have a high chance of death, are given to those of lower class, of lower loyalty. The higher your family status, the better chance you have of something good. I was deemed pretty much useless and ended up on this post out in the middle of nowhere in Samjian. It was just this little outpost, and we were to patrol, guard the outpost, and procure supplies daily. I worked shitholes like this for years, rotating through places that were desolate with tiny populations, eating horrible food, and suffering abuse daily. That was until I was eventually transferred to this base that was located near the capital, Pyongyang. I could not believe my ears when I was told this, but it was not at all that it first seemed. There was this almost bunker-like thing on the outskirts of the city, basically at the base of a mountain-like thing, and was actually built into the ground in the woods. It was always heavily guarded. Citizens have to be escorted by armed guard to visit the nearby cemetery. It was way out of the way of the big city. I don't want to spend time telling you about all of the horrible things that I witnessed here. I don't want to tell you about all of the horrible things that they made me do. Executing a young boy because his father fled the country. They made me pull the trigger. And it was all for nothing anyway, because his father barely got a mile out of their grasp before they hauled him back in and tortured him for hours until his body finally gave up. They closed down the graveyard for a while, and I was to stand guard every night along with another rotation of soldiers. I was basically given zero info on what was going on. My orders were essentially, stand in this spot, do not move. You will work from this time to this time, and this soldier will retrieve you when it is time for you to rest. 12 hours straight, they wanted me to stand with nothing but a set of binoculars, a rifle, and a bottle of water. If I needed to piss, I had to do it out in the open while still watching. It did not take long for me to notice strange things, and that was without even really looking. We had a half-assed checkpoint set up, and I was to check IDs and verify the personnel being let into the graveyard and the site, but I only checked on day 1, and afterwards I just left them alone and let them do what they needed to do. If I hassled them too much, then I would be berated, and then command would not be happy with me. There were no military personnel coming in, aside from the scheduled rotations. It was all scientists. The thing that freaked me out the most is that they were wearing these protective suits, like these big fumigation suits with built-in gas masks and such. They had trucks pulling in. I had to occasionally do spot checks just to double-check the cargo, and they had all sorts of chemicals in the back, the names of which I had never heard before in my life. I had never even seen anything like it. What possible use they could have for something like that in a graveyard is what I was wondering. I was mostly on guard duty during the night, with other soldiers taking shifts throughout the day, and there was no small talk or gossip between us. Gossip was grounds for serious punishment. There was a base nearby and soldiers flowing through every so often, and vehicles pulling past or pulling up. You would not talk to the scientists either. Just opening your mouth will get you in serious trouble. Beatings, starvation, or worse. They couldn't exactly force me to close my eyes though, and I saw things while I was there. Too many things. These scientists had these, I want to call them tubes or something, but they were big. Like, really big. Bigger than my arm. Wider than my head, probably. They were attached to and running from a nearby temporary shelter that had been set up. They were connected to barrels. I assume they had some kind of chemicals in them, probably a mixture of what had been arriving. It immediately struck me as odd because they were running these tubes into the ground. They were running them into graves, running them in this neat network that would hit basically every grave in the graveyard, it looked like. I had never really seen anything like it before. They spent days mixing and connecting and preparing. Before I saw the barrels through the window one night, I thought maybe they were dumping some kind of waste that they had no other place for. I had no idea how waste management worked in the city. I thought maybe they had some new technique instead of a landfill. Then I saw the barrels and thought maybe they were storing nuclear waste where no one would look for it or come into direct contact with it. But that would not work either. I know now from research after I have left that nuclear waste has to be contained and can't just be dumped or pumped into the ground in its raw form, or it will cause massive problems and affect the people of Pyongyang. Kill them or make them ill or worse. So, what the hell were they dumping? I know that by this point, no one had visited the cemetery under guard for a number of years. I think the deceased there were old, and all of the relatives had passed or didn't care. I figured new graveyards had been built somewhere, or maybe people just weren't being allowed to anymore. One night, the important night, I am on guard duty as usual, and I hear this whirring sound behind me, and then these loud funking mechanical noises. They had set up these machines nearby, something like generators but not quite. I'm not sure if they were just for power or had some other kind of purpose, but they were really loud. I could not help myself from turning around and looking, which made me catch some abuse from the scientists. Before I ended up turning back around, I could see that these tubes were now being used. The machine was helping to pump them, and I could see them almost throbbing as something quite big and thick was being pumped into the dirt, directly into where the graves were. I started to smell this really horrible chemical smell, and every time I breathed in and got a whiff of it, I could feel my nose start to burn. It felt like the little hairs inside my nose were stinging or catching fire, or like a little electrical jolt on them. I can't even describe the chemical smell. It was like smelling chlorine, but more sour, I guess you would maybe say, and this hint of something metallic. I also had this foul taste in my mouth that I could not really pinpoint. The pumping of these, what I assume are chemicals in hindsight, continues for around 5 minutes or so, before I start to hear these really strange but faint sounds. It sounds like a really distant thunder, just on the edge of my hearing. I also think I hear scratching, like the sound of a cat pulling its claws along wood or tree bark. I was not paying it any mind. I was tired, barely keeping my eyes open while standing, and I figured whatever weird things were happening was down to these machines. Out of what seemed like nowhere, I started to feel these shock waves moving through the earth. I could feel them travel along the ground, and I felt the sensation travel into my feet and up my legs. It startled me, and I could not help but turn around and ask what the hell was going on, just on impulse. It could have gotten me killed, but I was so confused. It was like I was on autopilot, and they told me very quickly to shut up and turn back around. But before I could even have a chance, the ground started to almost rumble. Not like a really high magnitude earthquake, but just these little rumblings that made me lose my balance. These scientists or whoever they claimed to be were fumbling, shouting to each other, checking the machine and making notes. One of them made a radio call. I heard a siren going off in the distance that signaled that the nearby base would be on high alert, and I guess they were being called over. One of the guys starts yelling frantically to stop the machine, but the others just shake their heads and tell him to wait. The rumblings continued over the next minute and seemed to get worse, until I saw the dirt and ground directly above the graves start to visibly shake and move up and down. It was every single grave in the graveyard, not just one. All at once, the shaking and rumbling just stops, and everything is quiet for a second apart from those weird noises that have become louder. And then one by one, the dirt above the graves just start to give way. The dirt starts to form this kind of sinkhole or something, and the dirt starts to funnel downwards like crumbling sand, and these big holes started to form. This took multiple minutes to happen, and by that point most soldiers had arrived. I was punched by one of my commanding officers for watching, and then told to get into formation. I think this is what scared me the most. They did not even take the time to properly punish me. That never happened. We were all lined up with our rifles raised, and I did not know what we were waiting for. The scientists were still near the machine, and there were a couple of soldiers next to them restraining them and shouting at them to turn off the machine. Everything after this is just a blur that I can faintly recall. I remember hearing this loud sound that made my ears ring. I remember something making the dirt that was left near the grave almost pop, and then something, what looked like a limb, shot out of it. I remember seeing this weird, translucent thing sliver its way out. You could see straight through it. It had no kind of organs. It wasn't built like a human, but it had these weird limbs. And it was fast. I don't remember how it moved or how its limbs worked. I remember my commanding officer shouting at us to be ready to fire. I remember seeing it move in a flash and appearing by the scientists. I remember seeing it grab one scientist by the ankles. I remember seeing his legs just turning into a liquid. The thing held him. I heard the scream. I swore I saw some kind of steam coming off of the scientist and the creature, and I saw just liquid where the ankle and the foot should have been. Not like water, but viscous. Some kind of goo, maybe. We were told to fire, and we did, but it did not work immediately. The soldiers closest to the thing did not stand a chance. One of them just dropped after being touched. Nothing melted like the other guy. I didn't see any steam or water or goo. He fell to the ground, and this could have just been my mind seeing things. He fell to the ground in a pile of loose skin, like he became 2D. Does that even make sense? Like there was nothing underneath him anymore, like he had no bones left under the skin, There was nothing keeping his form. I remember seeing bullets hit this thing. I remember hearing these screams that I cannot recall, but I never saw any blood. It tried to retreat back to the sinkhole. It damn near got away, but it eventually seized up. I saw its limbs curl upwards towards itself, like when a spider dies. Again, the aftermath is just kind of a blur. I got put on cleanup. I remember throwing up lots of times. I remember being taken into this locked, all-white room, being threatened. I don't even remember the threats because I was not even present in the room. I was like, not in my body listening. I could not think or see straight. No one gossiped, so no one knew. No one talked. That was the end. I stood guard there for another few weeks. They pumped more chemicals. They used those machines again. Nothing came out any other time that I was there. It was then that I realized my whole life was worthless. Everything I had ever done was pointless. I had no future anymore. I mean, I never did anyway, but at that point, it really set in. I never even really got a chance to grieve for my parents. Never got to visit their graves. I never even found out how or why they died. The process for being smuggled out of North Korea is a long one. It's detailed. The people helping can be killed at a moment's notice, and you will fall into a trap. If you have family and you escape, they will be punished. Every generation will be punished, even those who were born after you escape. I could not sleep or eat while all of this was going on. Knowing that everyone you ever spoke to, even in passing, was at risk of punishment. This whole entire escape, it took me years. Years of restlessness and planning. I couldn't just get away overnight. I had to stay there and reckon with what happened, reckon with what was going to happen. I only had one person who agreed to help, who I knew who I could trust. The less people you involve, the safer it is for everyone. He had smuggled people before. He knew the border pretty well. He knew all the different routes and all the different schedules. He knew the soldier rotations, when they take breaks, when was the best time to go, when the weather would be best. He could not accompany me personally, but he could advise me and then leave the rest to me. I had a tiny stash of food that I had to stretch, and I had a little pocket lighter and some valuables that had been left to me. An old wedding ring of my parents and a little necklace. I had to use these for bribes. The escape route had to be the northern border, where I would be crossing the Tumen River. It was incredibly dangerous, and I would only have one chance to get it right. The water is icy cold in the winter, so it had to be in the summer to avoid hypothermia before I even got to safety. The banks of the river are incredibly steep, so you have to claw your way up it with just your fingernails as quickly as you can before you grow weak and the strong current pulls you away. Once you cross to the Chinese side, it is just uninhabited wilderness for miles. I had to hope to not get lost in the dense forest or be killed by wildlife. I did not know any of this, but my helper, he informed me that there were landmines placed all around. He told me that where I was crossing was the safest, but he could not be sure that there would not be new ones placed. At any second, I could take one wrong step and lose my life. I have heard that in recent years, it has become even harder than when I left. They make the rivers deeper, so you can't climb and get swept away, and there are so many hidden traps and mines that the odds are not in your favor. And of course, there is always the chance that my helper is an inside man, and he or a local turns me in. Even to the end, you cannot trust anyone. You have to be prepared for absolutely everything. I had to wait for a dark night, for heavy fog, and then I just had to pray. Pray that I would not be spotted or shot. But I made it. I had planned for a shift change, and the intel that I had was right. I made it somehow, not without having blood streaming from my fingers and ripping the nail off entirely from the nail bed on one of my fingers. I remember that clearly because it got infected, and I was scared that my finger would fall off or it would spread to my entire hand. You are not even safe once you hit China. There are people always looking, and they will send you back. I had to get help through a contact that I was given. I had to hope that they were still alive. I moved through this network of safe houses that I think was operated by some kind of a Christian organization. They were pushy and preachy, but it felt comforting somehow, even if that was not my faith. This went on for weeks, a month or more, and the goal is to reach a third country where you will be safe and manage to gain asylum. I ended up in Thailand by the end. After that, I had to spend a long time scraping together money for food while I contacted the South Korean embassy. I think I had to talk to this third-party organization first to even get anywhere and even get into contact with them. After that, I was treated like a criminal for a while. Interrogations, investigations, background checks. It was, intense. But I am thankful. I managed to get away. I hope all those who helped me are okay. I hope other people manage to save themselves too. I don't really know what happened that night. In the end, I think maybe whatever chemicals they were pumping into the ground for whatever reason made my mind see things that were not there. Either that or I'm crazy, and life in North Korea just finally broke my mind. Either way, I am just glad to be safe. I feel happy I made it to share my experience, even if it isn't really a believable one. Hey, hope you've enjoyed the story so far. If you want to hear more, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment because it lets YouTube know you like the content and helps more people to see these videos. My next big goal for the channel is 100,000 subscribers, and as a celebration, I will be doing a Q&A video once we hit that goal. Thank you, and back to the stories. When this happened to me, I was about 18 years old. I had just gotten my draft notice for the Soviet army. I was not thrilled, of course, but it's what everyone does, and I didn't really have an option. I meet this guy called Oleg at the transit point. He is the same age as me. He's basically gone through the same thing. We are both from the same region. We are both city boys. Since we have this in common, we end up becoming pretty fast friends. Especially when we get assigned to the same training camp. That's when we properly become friends. The first week is hell. We got put through a lot of rough training, but we bonded over shared misery. One night, Oleg starts to tell me this story about last summer in his grandma's village. He says the village is somewhere deep in the Volga region. It's this tiny little place that is barely on the map. There are tons of these kinds of villages around Russia. He spent a month there. He said that there was nothing really to do but fish. He is not even a real angler, but he says that boredom makes you creative. He explores every single riverbank that there is in the village. He catches enough fish to feed the whole village. But then he starts to get restless. He wants something new. The same old lakes are becoming boring. The same old rivers are offering nothing new. Oleg's grandma mentions a lake to him. She says it's probably around 20 kilometers away, full of crucian carp. She says that men used to go there, spend the night, but then bad things started to happen. Drownings, disappearances, people just up and stop going. No one has fished there for a long time. There is another old village nearby, Olkovka. It's abandoned. The river is all dried up. Everyone left. Oleg's grandma is superstitious. She warns him to be careful, but she says, "You're a city boy. You will be fine. You know how to handle yourself." She gives him grandpa's battered Ural bike. She tells him the route. Oleg is completely hooked. He is desperate to see this lake. He wants to catch something big. He's imagining all the different fish that could be living there. He plans to go in the morning, but the rain kind of ruins it. By noon, the weather clears up. The sun is blazing. The birds are singing. Grandma tries to stop him, but he is really stubborn. He straps rods to the bike and shouts, "I'll be quick," and pedals off. The road winds through wheat and rye fields. The road is wide but pretty rough. It's a wonder he did not hit a stray rock and fall off his bike. He said that there was not a soul inside for over an hour. He starts to feel really uneasy while traveling there, but tells himself it just means more fish. He finally sees the village in the distance, just like Grandma described. The houses are old, all falling apart. The roofs are caved in, the windows are smashed. There is this one house in the village that stands out. It's about 4 stories tall. It's blackened by age, but it's shaped like a pyramid. It looks abandoned, but the windows are actually intact. The path leading up to the gate is all worn, like tons of people have walked over it over the years. Oleg slows down. He feels this chill running through his body, but he decides to keep going. The village is dead silent and there is no sign of anything. No dogs or people. There's only the wind howling. The road starts to get worse and more torn as he goes on. There are these huge puddles that have formed in gaps in the potholes. He almost loses the bike in one. He does not want to stop. He feels like something is watching him now. He gets to the last house on the edge of the village. There is this birch tree and an old wooden bench. He sees an old woman sitting there, staring at him. She is smiling. He shouts hello, but she does not respond. Just turns her head to follow him and watch him the whole way. He pedals faster. He feels her gaze burning into his back. He glances back. He sees her standing in a road, waving a handkerchief. He shakes it off. He enters a grove. He realizes it's the village cemetery. It's all abandoned too. The crosses and the monuments are all overgrown. They haven't been cleaned in who knows how long. The trees are blocking the sun. It feels like evening in there, even though it's still bright outside. He gets spooked. He thinks about turning back, but he pushes on. He finally reaches the lake. It's beautiful and untouched. There is forest all around. He sets up his rod and starts fishing. He catches these huge crucian carp, bigger than anything he's ever seen. But the line keeps breaking because the fish are too strong and his hands are shaking from excitement. He eventually loses track of time. The sun starts to set. He realizes he has been there for much too long. He needs to get back before dark. He packs up. He leaves most of the fish and only takes the biggest ones, as much as he can carry. He secures the bag, hops on the bike, and pedals hard. He wants to get past the cemetery and village before night falls, but fate has other plans. He enters the cemetery. His rear tire goes flat. He has almost 20 kilometers left to go. He has no way to ride. He has to stop and fix the tire. There are mosquitoes everywhere now. Darkness falls fast. It feels like the trees are closing in. He tries not to look at the graves, but he cannot help it. He imagines the dead watching him. He feels their eyes. He finally fixes the tire and rushes to pack up. His bag tips over. The fish flop on the ground. They are still alive. He throws them back in, ties the bag tight, and then pedals away. He feels relief as he leaves the cemetery and sees an open field ahead. He glances back to check the tire. He sees a boy sitting on the trunk, 6 or 7 years old, dirty, silent. He has no idea where he came from, too far away from any house. He stops and asks, "Who are you? Where did you come from?" The boy just stares and does not say a word. "Are you from Olkovka?" The boy nods. Oleg says, "I'll take you home. Hold on tight." He pedals fast. He tries to get the boy to talk, but he stays silent. He enters the village, sees the birch tree. The bench is empty. The old woman is just gone. The houses are all dark. No lights on, no movement. He asks, "What house do you live in?" The boy does not respond. He glances back. The boy is gone. The bag of fish is gone too. He curses and feels stupid, but he just wants to get home. He pedals through the village. Everything is silent. He passes the pyramid house. One window is glowing on the top floor. He feels a chill and starts pedaling faster. Suddenly, he hears a horse neighing from the black house. It is loud and sharp. He hears hooves clattering. There is a horse thrashing in the yard. He can't see anything because the fence is too high. Panic sets in and he pedals as fast as he can. He does not care about the tire or the fish anymore. He just wants to get home. The wheel holds up. He races across the field. He is exhausted by this point. He slows down a little and listens, but he can't hear anything. Then, he hears the clatter of hooves right behind him, getting louder, getting closer. He panics and tries to outrun it, but the road is narrow. There are fields on both sides. The hooves get closer. He can feel the horse breathing right behind him. He yanks the handlebars and crashes into the wheat. The horse rushes past. It is riderless. He lies in the field with his heart pounding and waits for the sound to fade. He drags the bike back to the road. Front wheel is bent now. He cannot ride it. He starts walking, with the bike limping beside him. He walks for hours and loses track of time. He hears hooves again, but also this time, he hears voices. He sees flashlight beams and villagers in a cart. He sees his grandma's neighbors searching for him. They laugh at his story, say they never saw a horse on the road. He gets home. Grandma is terrified, especially by the story of the boy and the fish. She crosses herself and scolds him for days. Never take anything from a churchyard, even if it's valuable. Leave it or you will be cursed. This story sticks with me, but I try to forget. A month later, Oleg gets kicked by a horse during kitchen duty. The hoof hits him in the forehead. He is in critical condition. He is taken to the hospital and discharged soon after. I never found out what happened to him after that. I never saw him, so I don't know if he survived. I can't shake the feeling that something followed him back from the village. It seems almost like too much of a coincidence.